Hey everybody, welcome back to Contest Prep University. Joe Klemczewski with Adam Atkinson. I should welcome us back. We have taken a little bit of a break with some travel, end of the year stuff. I just got back from the WNBF World Championship, so I'm going to bring that into the conversation just a little bit, Adam. But I love the fact that you suggested that we talk about genetic limitations and appropriate goal setting for a contest season. This is one of my favorite topics, and I didn't really consider why until you mentioned it. It's just kind of my default go-to first thought when I work with a new client. For example, somebody contacted me today, and I immediately got some background information. And the first words I replied back with once we were moving into that phase of programming, let's actually kind of break down the granular aspects of our goals. What can we do monthly? What are we looking at for a time frame for this goal? And it's all to frame those expectations. I want to give somebody a clear view of the potential journey, what to expect, trying to orient them toward the work that we're going to engage in together. And for high level competitors, I think that's incredibly important to frame that also within their genetic potential, both metabolically, phenotypically, what they might achieve in the sport, whatever level they're competing at. But here's my conundrum, and I'll let you kind of address this. You don't want to you want somebody to have realistic expectations. You want them to have realistic goals, but you also don't want to damper any enthusiasm. You don't want to hold somebody back. So what is your experience in framing your work between those two extremes?
Well, I think the nice thing about bodybuilding, and people may not understand it, there's definitely levels to it. So, typically someone who you might dampen their hopes, who has a lot of enthusiasm, I'm not going to consult with them and say we're going straight to the Olympia in 3 years. So we'll set those mini goals and be excited about those and then kind of see where it goes from there. And you do have to be, open and honest and not so positive that you're toxically positive. But I think the levels of bodybuilding and even more so greater now because now I can have competitors do an NPC drug tested show where, now I can kind of have people start with a little bit shorter of an off season just because the amount of muscle size out the gates isn't going to be as big as it used to be for brand new clients. So, just having the levels and explaining the levels and, you know, unless someone's just completely disoriented on where they should be, they can usually understand kind of why we might have them do certain things and enter certain contests. And some of the contests are closed at the higher level. You can't just go in and do a nationals, can't just go in and submit an application for the Olympia and get selected.
Yeah, I have two clients that I can think of in just the last few days I've had this conversation with. One is a very high level pro, just phenomenal pro. One is an amateur who's really made some incredible progress, as you said, moving through levels and tapping into what their genetic potential is. But very, very different genetic specimens when I compare them against each other. I mean, one person really has the frame and the muscle quality, and you just look at the fullness and the ability to get lean to truly be knocking on the door of any professional contest win. And then the other person, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a struggle. You're going to win some, you're going to lose a lot on your way there. And so making sure that the expectations are both appropriate, yet with a dopaminergic response high enough to really enjoy the process. And I have to say that was my competitive career. We've talked about, our careers on the stage many, many times. And I was a very average bodybuilder, average genetics, some strengths, some weaknesses, and, became, an average pro. Lucky enough to get to that level, but I was never going to do anything substantial. Um, Here's the interesting thing about genetics. You never know that you've achieved all you can. So no matter where you are, no matter how great you look, every little nuance you're trying to improve, you just don't know how close you are. And so that dangling carrot is always there to move us forward. Uh, I wonder if you have clients that, you mentioned, I love this phrase, toxic positivity, who almost get to a level of negativity. Like, am I ever going to get there? What's the difference between being delusionally optimistic or just, negative and therefore frustrated and maybe give up?
Well, I think a lot of times the delusionally optimistic just they want the shortcuts, they want the easy way. And my people who are there or have been there, they definitely work for it. They make it their life. And I don't think bodybuilding has to be your whole life. I'm really good at reeling those clients in and saying, you're really perfect in this bodybuilding world, but have you ever thought about the things you can do outside of that? And at some point they end up listening. I had the honor of training Craig Elias, and he's one of the biggest bodybuilders of all time. And, sometimes he talks about going into a bigger run. Like he does say that. I wonder if I could get bigger. This is my biggest, how much bigger can I get? But we've also had some conversations that are on his mind that say, well, we've talked about this. So how does that pertain to that goal? And maybe we just say that was the best, but maybe we get better in other ways where you're, this weight, but you're also the leanest you've been at this weight before. And that kind of aligns more with, I think, kind of where he's wanting to go right now in his life, which is awesome because, honestly, training him a year ago, I don't think he would have listened to me. And either we've established that trust together now, or, he's just in that phase of his life. So, what clients say now will be different later down the road, too. I always wanted way bigger legs, and I've torn my meniscus. I have to go about it a way different way than I used to have to go about it. But the goal is still there. But I slightly wonder if it's as possible as when I was doing the stuff I more so wanted to be doing to grow my legs.
Yeah, I hope this is helpful for our listeners and viewers on a psychological level because it is a place where I can't say my opinion is the correct one, but I used this phrase with a staff member this week. We were talking about something I was pursuing, and I said, it's just kind of my personality that I am always delusionally confident. I'm not a narcissist, I'm not arrogant, but everything I pursue, I know I'm giving it my all. I think I'm doing better than anybody else could. That's my mindset. And so I always have this optimism that I'm going to do this endeavor, fill in the blank, and everything great is going to happen. I'm going to be rewarded for that. And when that doesn't happen sometimes, I have a very quick rebound. I don't get frustrated. I don't get set back. I simply realize, okay, that's why that happened. I needed to do a little better here, or that person was a little better there. And it's a weird, almost chronological effect. It's not two sides of the same coin. It's not a binary opposite. It's the chronology of I truly have that mental framework to be that confident. And then as soon as I don't get what I wanted, like it's okay. And I go on to the next thing with that same kind of confidence. And I just wonder if that's weird. Like maybe I am totally delusional. But this staff member I was talking to said, "Man, I wish I had that kind of confidence." And it just makes me wonder if that is something that people can, find useful.
Well, I think what's cool with bodybuilding is it really shows you the ability to change. I was able to change my physique, so why can't I change my mind? Or like if I want to sound smarter in a group of people, like I could definitely work to do that. But the bodybuilding's cool because you visually see it, and that's your, kind of tap on the shoulder that you changed in that regard. And I think to your point, carrying confidence on being able to do certain things. Now, there's things I choose not to do, like making my own website and stuff like that. Even though I know I probably could do it, I just know that my time is more valuable with my clients and stuff like that. And, just saves me the headaches. And plus, if I don't enjoy doing it, I'm probably not going to pursue that. So, you can definitely, based off of your bodybuilding progress and using that as an example, you can do lots of different things if you apply yourself.
That's one of the thoughts I had in preparing for this. One of my children, my youngest, is graduating from college next semester, moving right into graduate school. And I think back to my academic career and those times it just seemed like they're never gonna get there. A 4-year degree, a doctorate, another master's. It's like, wow, this is a lot of work, and I'm now just engaging in step one. How could I ever do this with all these other things I'm dealing with in life? And yet you do. But it comes from a place that you said it has to be something you enjoy, has to be something that you're really willing to give it a long-term effort and be okay with some of those setbacks. Again, when I look at my career, academically, career-wise, business-wise, a lot of deviations, a lot of ups and downs, but what you stick with is something that you really feel has some value. So if we get back into appropriate goal setting, I'm going to put it in the context of one of my clients who competed at Worlds, who is always a top 5 pro male bodybuilder, and he looked his best ever. It was unbelievable. Like he couldn't believe how much he'd improved. I was happy with that, and yet he didn't win his class. Matter of fact, he dropped a couple placings just because the quality of people who showed up was just that much better this year. And I was upset. I was like, man, I am so sorry. Like I really thought we had this one. He said, dude, I couldn't be happier. Like this was remarkable. I have nothing but gratitude and happiness about this. I'm like, really? Okay. Like I was worried you wouldn't just because of the placing. But he again looks at it at, how much he did improve and where. And he immediately, like I described a few minutes ago, went back to, okay, now for the next trip to the stage, let's work on this and this. These are the two areas I know I can still improve a little bit. And then, of course, you get into the genetics. Like, how can we do that? You're already so good. How can we really exploit something that may still be left on the table?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we look at genetic limitations too, obviously muscle growth is probably one of the bigger ones most people are going to think about. And just the ability to get lean enough. So, metabolism, right? Some people just maybe might not be able to get that lean, but muscle shape has so much more to deal with this than what people probably realize. My girl who went pro in wellness, she doesn't have the biggest legs in the world, and she actually got her pro card as a drug-free, competitor in the NPC and IFBB. Actually went to the Olympia this year, but it's the shape of her legs that give the illusion that they are bigger for her, and the shape and the insertions of the muscle can really limit someone's potential because if your biceps are just flat, they can be as big as you want. They're just not going to look as aesthetically big or pleasing to, somebody who has more of that shape. And I think that a lot of people don't really consider that when we look at genetic limitation is was the shape of the muscle.
You bring up such an excellent point for me having just been in Boston at the World Championships, and it is. Everybody, you take them apart, you look at their Instagram photos, their progress data, and you just think this person's unbeatable. Like look at this human being. There is no way. And then you get them on a stage next to 15 other people, and it's like, holy crap, like wow, you're all of a sudden you're against people who are even better. And you have to keep that, whatever level you're competing at, in mind that there is always the game within the game, which is your progress and how you're moving up, even contest to contest, year to year. There are going to be some ups and downs in terms of placements. But if you are consistently improving your physique, and down to this is where bodybuilding does put it back in the hands of the competitor for those tiny shape changes. I think you and I would agree physiologically, genetics are genetics, your phenotype, your skeletal structure, all kinds of anthropomorphic ways of measuring your body limb lengths versus, spine length and this and that. Your sternal length, so your pecs are a certain amount of your entire torso. Like all of these things that you could literally quantify give you the visual symmetrical shape of your body on stage that a judge is going to view. And you and I want clients to build the most muscle possible. We want the biggest delts, the biggest quads, the roundness, all of that. But when you think you've tapped out all you can get genetically, and you think, okay, I'm getting beat because perhaps my hamstring thickness isn't quite where it is, how can I get a little bit more? Are there just certain exercises I can double up on, I can focus on a little bit more? Is it all posing? Do I just need to angle a foot this way or do that? This is where you can really get competitive from the stage perspective, not just, randomly going in the gym and quote, working hard every time. So maybe for a final swipe at maximizing your genetic potential, what do you ever have you ever said to a client like we just can't go any farther? I think this is the best you could ever look.
I think if health is a concern for sure, but I typically don't drive my athletes negatively in that regard. So I've never really ran into that. But as an outsider looking in, I think there's been certain athletes where I'm like, that's probably as far as they should go. Or, they get a scare or something like that. It's probably time to, shut it down, and I hope I'm never in that situation, because I would like to always keep my eye on the prize or always give my clients something to work towards. Um, I think though, I love comparing bodybuilding to golf. So like if in that event, like the client needs more hamstrings, well, we don't want to focus on the short game so much that we dismiss the drives and the chips because we're only working on putting because we could equally try to work on those hamstrings so much that we take our eyes off of all the other great things they've had and maybe diminish in those areas. And to me, that's what makes this fun per se. And I do think it's a lot of fun. It's really cool to see the athletes progress. It's fun when you have the athletes who are going to not get blinded by the next post on Instagram and know that you make a good team and stick it out and know that my answer is never necessarily no. I'm willing to give my clients whatever they need as long as it's within reason and, building that team dynamic all the way up until the stage for multiple years because that's really when the fun begins.
Well, and I was going to answer my own question when I asked, is there ever a top level? You just say, look, you're as good as you're ever going to get, just let's deal with that. As a no, because again, you just do not know, and that's what keeps us striving. But you did offer the perfect caveat, which is, well, if it's endangering somebody's health or their safety, like this is we need to think about that. This there is a limit to here is how your physique looks genetically, phenotypically, and so for us to get any better, we can focus on this. Does that mean you're going to be as good as Miss Olympia? Who knows? We won't know till I get there. But I also it makes me think of another client who always had a great perspective, somebody who was always in the hunt to win a world title and would win it one year, would win it 2 years in a row, and then maybe not win it, and then win it the year following. Say, hey, I'm as good as I can get, quote unquote. I'm up there. Now it's down to who shows up, who's working on those finer details, peaking, did I get lean enough? And whether it's think of any kind of a performance sport. When Michael Jordan, the Bulls were always in the hunt, or it was, the Cowboys versus the Steelers in the 70s and 80s, or the Boston Celtics and the LA, just always going back and forth, Magic Johnson, Bird. Like you're just always going to be making some progress, but you're not going to win them all. I think that's an important factor.
Yeah, I think a big thing with the men that I'm noticing at these higher levels of natural bodybuilding is the posing. And I think of all the, drug-free shows I've gone to and all the NPC stuff. When you're judging these guys and they hit, their front relax pose and their quads are crazy in, and then they do the turns and then they turn to the front and they're not. It's like, well, I can't judge you based off of how your quads look the first time you hit them versus not hitting them the rest of the time. And I've seen where guys definitely have better physiques, better photos. And, there's even if your muscle growth is tapped, I think a lot of times for the men and the women too, but really the men a lot on holding those quads in on those poses, it comes down to posing for these guys and in the conditioning of the posing, which we used to be able to say way back in the day. That's kind of what conditioning meant. And yeah, it's a game changer to be able to hold those poses, be like a Brian Wager and just hit those quads every time consistently. I think you're seeing really good competitors who are missing the mark on that now.
Yeah, well, this client I had at WNBF Worlds in a lighter weight men's class, it was kind of a throwback to that era where that class was on stage for 45 minutes. Very rare to be able to spend that much time, but that's just how tough the judging was, how tough the class was. One last thing I'll say about genetics, don't be afraid to also play your strengths. A lot of people are after, quote, perfect symmetry. If this is something that really is developmentally an asset for me, maybe I just need to kind of downplay that so it doesn't overshadow the rest of my body. A lot of the best champions have something that is just almost unattainable by other people. There is symmetry, there is balance, of course, the conditioning versus size. But if you have a dominant body part that is truly an asset to your division, don't hold back on that. Try to bring everything else up into the balance you want, but having a solid singular strength is also something that can be very eye-catching to the judges.
Yeah, absolutely. How many guys do you know that could pose for 45 minutes like that, right?
I had an experience like that myself, and it gave me a strain, like a tensor fasciae lata IT band issue that I swear I still have a problem with it to this day. I mean, it literally like was a traumatic experience trying to do that for literally 45 minutes. But
Wow.
all right, man. Genetic limitations, appropriate goal setting. We got to look at the long term. Uh, Play that game within the game. Measure your progress within yourself year to year to year on the way. It really, as cliche as it sounds, just enjoy the process. Get in the gym, enjoy every single day that you can make that singular momentum work for you. Um, but Adam, appreciate you always. Again, great topic. And those of you interested, don't forget about our Contest Prep University D1 Club, private group where we can get together and chat about things off camera, help each other through the process of our own competitive careers. And we'll see you next time in Contest Prep University.